Good evening, Wolfpack. It's time. Time to rank off the greatest tales of suspense from the lost, beloved, underrated horror anthology classic, R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour. For those of you who are new here, my name is Catastrophe. I'm a talking cat on the internet who reviews horror shows, and many other things that pique my curiosity. One of these shows on our channel includes the old Hub Network show, The Haunting Hour. This series was a horror story collection featuring unsuspecting little children going on many dark supernatural adventures, encountering deranged monsters, fighting for their survival, learning morals along the way, and of course, submitting the viewers to boatloads of nightmare fuel. I absolutely love The Haunting Hour, and while I'm not above making numerous mean-spirited jabs and hilarious nitpicks here and there, I truly see it as a phenomenal show overall, and would highly recommend seeing it if you are interested in good horror stories. There was little to no continuity in this show, so each and every tale was a new standalone episode featuring different characters and monsters in it all the time, so it would be easy to attract new viewers who don't need to start watching from the very beginning to catch up. It's also why I reviewed each episode on its own, as opposed to an overall series review, because the formula was almost always different in some way. A few people have actually cried about me being too harsh on the show, despite me openly acknowledging that my reviews are simply my opinions. But hey, it's the internet. There's always someone stupid trolling you on it. I bring this up because I actually reviewed this show's top 10 worst episodes ever first. You mean the greatest Haunting Hour episodes? Shut up, House. I wanted to go over this show's weakest tales first to get them out of the way, but this led to a lot of people claiming that I'm too mean towards the show and wouldn't know a good episode if it showed up in my litter box. Well, that's not even remotely true, because the stories on this countdown list here were, in my personal humble opinion, the best episodes this series has ever made, and I'm going to prove it. I just need to lay down my ground rules first. I shouldn't have to tell this to anyone on a reviewing channel, but I have to because internet crybabies. All of the episodes included on this video are my personal favorite episodes of the series, and this is all my opinion. These episodes are my favorite episodes ever, and I do not speak for the show's fandom as a whole. I love these episodes with a passion, but if you don't, then that's fine. This show had dozens of awesome episodes to choose from. Speaking of which, since this is also a top 10 video, chances are an episode or two that you might like is probably not going to be on here. I'm sorry, but this is a top 10 list. A top 50 would go on for an eternity. Sorry, kiddies, but if you can believe it or not, this list video was one of the hardest videos I had to ever make in my life. The show had so many fantastic episodes on its resume that narrowing it down to only 10 was really difficult for me. But I do truly believe I have tons of goodies on here, so it was worth it. Finally, as some of my longtime subscribers might have noticed, I did not put up a spoiler warning on this video. I usually place spoiler warnings at the start of everything I do, since I end up critiquing major story elements in my videos. But this time, I'm not going to, because I don't want to soil any new viewer's experience watching The Haunting Hour. Since these episodes are so good that if you have somehow never watched them before in your life, then I don't want to give away anything important so you can see how good they are first paw. These episodes are that great, and if you've never seen them, then I won't spoil anything on here in case you want to see them for yourself. So this video itself is going to be completely spoiler-free.
No, darling. Please, no spoilers. No spoilers.
So, with all that out of the way, let's finally begin. What does an uncool adult like me know about a fantastic family horror show? You're about to find out. These are my top 10 best episodes from the hit horror series R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour. Number 10. Afraid of Clowns. Putting aside how this is mostly an unfaithful adaptation of a Nightmare Hour short story, I honestly found this episode to be pretty amazing. In this tale, we follow a troubled boy named Chris dealing with his crippling fear of clowns because apparently they scarred him for life by doing creepy things, like getting face close to him, holding knives towards him, and stabbing a cake in the shape of his body right in front of him. Gee, I can't believe a kid was traumatized from this. Chris is about to have his 13th birthday today, and is attempting to conquer his phobia of clowns for good, but soon he discovers that the clowns are stalking him, and have always been watching him since he was a child, plaguing him with tons of paranoia once they start making their presence more well known during his shift into a teenager. Not going to lie, I'm not afraid of clowns. Like, at all. In fact, I never found the Crimson Clown all that scary, since most of the fear factor for the monsters relied on the audience being terrified of goofy, over-the-top, makeup-wearing clowns. Sorry, but they aren't nearly as scary as those evil dogs. Nevertheless, I still found this tale to be quite entertaining, even if you are not horrified by clowns in the slightest. Yeah, it was so great that somebody who's not even terrified of clowns could really get into it. That's mostly because the story is quite well written, and full of huge plot twists that really do surprise you. The twist ending to this one is so absurd, but it really blows your mind since it kind of makes the entire story look even stronger when you rewatch it, so there's a ton of replay value on this one. And if you do have a fear of clowns, then you might be really scared by this, because the show loves hammering it in that the clowns are indeed stalking this underage child, and only make things creepier with scenes like this.
Don't be scared. I'm here for you. We're all here for you.
Personally, I think the episode does a really decent job at balancing out the scary moments and the comedic moments with the demon clowns, because there were a lot of times where I found them more on the funny side. My favorite parts of the episode are with Captain Crazy and his traveling circus. You see, eventually Chris gets asked out on a date by his crush, who takes him to, where else? The clown circus in town, forcing our kid hero to confront his fear of clowns once and for all. But it turns out that the clowns were expecting him all along, and hosted this show all for him. I won't give away too much, but the silly clowns eventually force Chris into coming on stage for a special trick for his birthday, where they prank him by smearing clown makeup on him. But I only bring this up because I absolutely loved Captain Crazy's one-liners.
He wants to know what's going on. Show him what's going on. See for yourself. You're not that good-looking, kid.
Oh, what? That was funny. You might be scared of these guys, but I'm having great fun. And that's the best way I can describe it. It was both extremely scary and so much fun. People who are afraid of clowns will most likely be scared by the disturbed stalking and terror from the circus folk, while people who aren't afraid of clowns, like me, could get a real good chuckle out of the silly clown performances and appreciate the well-tailored storytelling, especially when we get to the twist ending. Again, I won't spoil anything, but it honestly makes the story all the more better because the writers actually drop the clues here and there on what's really going on, perfectly demonstrating excellent horror writing. It has decent scary moments, a lot of sinister uneasiness in the air, some great actors, good writing, funny yet ominous antagonists, talks about a relatable fear most people do have, contains really clever foreshadowing, actually does have story elements that do subvert your expectations, and is basically entertaining overall. I highly recommend checking this one out, since it also makes a great starting point for new viewers to jump on board the Haunting Hour. What more can you want? Afraid of Clowns is a good little horror adventure that's scary for the kids and fun for the adults, showing us the amazing spectacle under the big top. Number 9. Toy Train. Initially, I didn't like this episode when I first saw it as a young kitten, since I found it to be quite boring in a few places, and really not scary. Imagine that! Cat not liking something! Alert the media! However, I actually grew to love this episode a lot more when I got older. This is actually one of the few episodes I didn't like at first, before starting to appreciate it more and more the longer I was analyzing it. And I think I know why. The basic praise I have for this plot is that, yeah, this one's a great story, no doubt. It's a tale about how the past always comes back to haunt us, history repeats itself if we fail to accept our mistakes, and we should never bottle up our emotions. Great stuff. So great that it gives the story a strong timeless quality, which is still standing to this very day. In fact, I would honestly say that this plot almost feels like a Silent Hill chronicle rather than a Goosebumps quest, because it was seriously that phenomenal. But one of the new things I have to appreciate about this one is that it wasn't an episode that only tried to appeal to children. No, this episode wanted to appeal to adults. As in, the Haunting Hour writers were well aware of their larger growing audience and took a brief pause on all the goofy monsters and unsettling fun scares to actually make a tale that wants to connect with the adult audience. And I quite liked that. I love that the Haunting Hour wanted to reach out towards the parents and adult viewers with this one, since that is so unique compared to what we usually got on Goosebumps or the short-lived Nightmare Room, so I was pleasantly surprised. In this adventure, we get a slow burn story where an optimistic, fun-loving boy named Logan and his distant, emotionally closed-off father Hank inherit an old farmhouse after Hank's father passes away. Of course, the farm is soon revealed to be haunted by ghosts from the past, seeking the guys out for mysterious reasons. Logan soon befriends a bizarre little boy named Henry, who has a fascination with the town's local train station, while Hank distances himself from his son to avoid bringing up his past, almost as if he has something to hide. Things only get even weirder when this ominous switchman who looks like goth Doc Brown pops up and observes the family from afar.
I just like to watch you guys.
I also have to bring up that I love the beautiful cinematography in this, because a lot of these shots look so awe-striking. This scene with the switchman standing off in the distance looks like it could easily be an art portrait. It's so visually interesting. As you can guess, Logan soon finds a toy train set that strangely models his father's entire childhood town to perfect detail, with the toy train activating all by itself whenever the ghost train arrives for a visit. However, the story takes a unique turn by not making the young boy Logan our main protagonist. In a rather surprising twist, the parent, Hank, is actually our real main character, and all the supernatural ghost hauntings have been going on around here because of his mistakes in the past. You see, the town is apparently Silent Hill, and lured Hank here for the purpose of confronting his dark past, since history is in danger of repeating itself once more. The question is, can Hank accept all the weird stuff going on around here before it's too late? And can he salvage his decaying relationship with his own son, or will he refuse to change for the better? I truly loved this tale of suspense, since it was unexpectedly great at how it managed to grow into something more than just a generic monster story or some lame cliched haunted house joint, by showing us that the haunting hour could be smart when it wanted to be. Toy Train is a supreme episode that deserves more appreciation than what it's worth. Now, I will warn you that it's not exactly scary, since most of the horror scenarios are very downplayed, and it goes for a more emotional horror story with your past haunting you, rather than the things that go bump in the night theme. Truth be told, it doesn't even feel like an average haunting hour story. It actually feels more like an art house film. Definitely a huge new experiment for the series. However, what truly saves it is that the emotional ending does feel earned and uplifting in the end, making me kind of appreciative that the haunting hour was so great at making us feel for characters in a horror show. So great job. Oh my gosh, making us feel for characters in a horror story and having it realistically work? Who would have thunk it? It's only the basic rule of writing. Thank you, Haunting Hour, for reminding us of the simple factor of making the audience care about the main characters in horror stories again. Take notes, Bye Bye Man. This episode was so awesome that I actually retconned my original score for it into a perfect score, because I think this tale is just that deep. Toy Train has very grand visuals, complex characters, an ominous atmosphere, strong emotional moments, a good lesson for both kids and adults, decent writing, good acting, and is overall just one heck of a ride. True, there are some drawn-out moments, and the scary ghost man isn't too intimidating, but I think Toy Train is an excellent emotional journey that rolls as fast as a speeding locomotive. Number 8. Headshot. This is, paws down, the greatest adaptation of the picture of Dorian Gray I have ever seen. No joke, this entire episode is one grand homage to the Oscar Wilde story, The Picture of Dorian Gray, a novel about a selfish man named, well, Dorian Gray, who has a cursed painting that grants him immortality after he made a deal with the devil. But the more evil Dorian acts in his life, the uglier his portrait gets, symbolizing the true hideous monster Mr. Gray is becoming as he commits more and more wicked sin. This Haunting Hour tale is pretty much similar to that novel, but about a female protagonist and set during a modern setting. And the best part is that it's a modernized adaptation that doesn't suck. On this fan-favorite tale of suspense, we follow a shy coffee girl named Gracie Wild who dreams of becoming a famous model for Teen Teen magazine, until one day, a strange modeling agent dubbed Cassandra Hobbs recruits Gracie to make all her dreams come true, hands her the key to easy popularity, and offers her some prize-winning headshots in return for becoming the new face of the teen modeling world. Unfortunately, all the fame goes to Gracie's head, slowly turning her into a cruel attention whore and a nasty brat, throwing away all her best friends, committing terrible actions, and choosing fame above everything else, causing her prize-winning headshot to slowly transform into an uglier monster the more she commits evil. A huge intelligent plot point in this story that's still hotly debated over to this very day is whether or not Gracie is being corrupted into becoming evil by her sinister mentor Cassandra, or if this is who she's always been deep down. Is Gracie truly a naive, misguided soul, or has she always been a selfish monster deep down and would have tossed her friends and family away at any time if she had a golden opportunity?
The world may never know.
I really think that Gracie has always been this mean-spirited deep down, but there is a window open to interpretation, which adds a cool gray morality here. This episode also does not have the traditional mass-murdering monster or a Scooby-Doo chase scene, but rather goes for a more philosophical and subtle approach. The scary moments mostly revolve around Gracie's down spiral into evil and Cassandra's mysterious nature slowly unraveling. So, much like Toy Train, it relies more so on the deeper storytelling and making the audience invested in what's going on, which really works. I thoroughly enjoyed this plot and don't have anything real negative to say about it, since it was well structured. The bare-bones description of this tale is that it's all a story about the price of fame, and if you're willing to sacrifice your own morals just to get it. Good lessons. Gracie slowly becomes worse and worse as she gives in to her lust for attention and fame, but her best friend Lexi suspects that her agent Cassandra has something to do with her gal pal's new jerk attitude. And of course, she does a little detective work to uncover the mystery. Sunset Shimmer would be so proud.
Sunset Shimmer, certified detective.
As you'd expect, Cassandra is not who she seems to be. But neither is Gracie. I found this fame versus friends formula to be written very well. The three main characters all have their complex traits. The scary moments were much better thanks to being subtle. The moral of the story is great for kids. The nods to Oscar Wilde's work were sweet. The acting was superb, and they did the impossible by making Sophia the First a jerk. It's honestly amazing how this children's horror story is much more impressive and complex than most horrendously awful adult horror stories, so I'm proud of the Haunting Hour for showing them up. In the end, Headshot is a fantastic, super smart, challenging horror story that I highly recommend. Much like the titular headshot of Gracie, it might look a little simple on the surface, but it hides something deep and disturbing on the inside. Number 7. The Dreamcatcher. Yeah, you all knew this one would be on here. After all, this one was one of the scariest episodes of the entire series. It was so horrifying that I still get comments mentioning how tons of people were scarred for life thanks to this Marilyn Manson spider demon. If you think this guy's scary, then you haven't seen Big Yellow yet. Personally, I do enjoy the story a lot, despite my usual mockery, since it does have a very unsettling atmosphere, cool shoutouts to A Nightmare on Elm Street, and best of all, a very disturbing, non-child-friendly villain. In this tale of nightmares, we follow a trio of little girls going camping, made up of Lisa, the shy new girl, Meg, the sociopathic idiot bully, and Apple Bloom, the best friend who both the other girls are fighting over. No, really, Michelle Creeber, the voice actress for Apple Bloom, is in the haunting hour. That's pretty funny. They're at an all-girls summer camp where naturally this unsettling creeper haunts their dreams so he can rape, murder, and eat them. Yes, really, they subtly imply that this guy might be doing things to these little girls in their nightmares. My biggest example being this scene where one of the little girls gets attacked in her dreams by it, but upon waking up she vomits spiderwebs out of her mouth. And when you remember that spider webs come out of spider butts, that only adds even more sick thoughts in our minds. However, there is a B-plot to this monster story too. The idiot bully Meg acts like a prick towards Lisa and Apple Bloom because she's jealous that Apple Bloom didn't want to be her best friend instead. So she sets out to ruin their camping trip at every turn, out of sick pettiness.
Shut up, Meg.
This rivalry soon leads to Meg sabotaging their dreamcatchers, allowing the boogeyman to infiltrate their dreams since they don't have the magic means to block him out anymore. This offers us several nightmare-inducing moments where Lisa and Apple Bloom are harassed and terrorized in their dreams by the big scary monster man, where many sleepless nights soon followed from all the children watching. Everyone praises this as the scariest tale of the series, since it does have some really dark moments in it, which I did enjoy. The dreamcatcher actually comes pretty close to killing these little girls, might have attempted to rape them based on what I've seen, lives in a giant scary spiderweb lair, which would even spook all the folks who are not arachnophobic, and the most grim part of all, we see that the dreamcatcher has a high kill count. Seriously, if you look closely in the background, he has clothes and other belongings from all the children he's caught in his web before he murdered them. Jeez, this is dark. Eventually, the dreamcatcher catches Apple Bloom, but keeps her alive in his web, daring her best friend Lisa to come and get her. Where, of course, our hero takes on the monster alone to save the best cutie mark crusader. I prefer Scootaloo. This episode has a lot of grim concepts, creepy fridge horror, nicely constructed settings, decent scary visuals, great monster costumes and makeup, and is mostly well written. However, I did not give it a perfect score or place it higher up on this list because I honestly didn't find the Dreamcatcher all that scary. I'm sorry, folks, but I can't help but think Marilyn Manson as Spider-Man every time I looked at him. And even when I was a little kitten, I thought Big Yellow and Lily D were scarier. Not helping was the actor's voice. I'm sorry, but his speaking voice could have been so much better.
If you were awake, I would be here.
If you were awake, I wouldn't be here. Oh! You know, I thought he was creepier when he didn't speak. Unlike most fans, I also found the twist ending of this episode to be kind of funny. Like, really funny, since I'm kind of a sick person. You'll know why if you see the dark ending yourself. But regardless, I still thought this was a good episode in the end, because there was a lot of sheer horror in this tale, and the episode really showed off how well the Haunting Hour got away with tons of disturbing ideas on a kid's show. So bravo, writers, I appreciate your talent for scarring kids for life. This episode will most likely always be on a true Haunting Hour fans' best episodes ever list, precisely because it's so good at horror and earned its title as one of this show's scariest tales of suspense. It's not too deep or anything, but it is simply a great horror story that puts so many lazy slasher movies to shame. So I can safely say that if you're looking for some disturbing monster stories or raw nightmare fuel, then this is your kind of episode, since The Haunting Hour has true mastery of terror on this. The Dreamcatcher might not be as perfect in my mind, but it is one of the best episodes this show ever made, since it makes many of us never want to sleep again. Number 6. Fear Never Knocks. That's right, I thought Fear Never Knocks was better than the Dreamcatcher. If you disagree with that, then come at me! Alright, I'll explain my case. Fear Never Knocks is an ominous psychological horror story about two kids coming face to face with the boogeyman himself as they attempt to understand their grandfather's study of phobias while also conquering their own personal fears. The two siblings, named Jenny and Jack, are staying over at their therapist grandfather's house over the holidays, but Jenny wants to become a fearless therapist exactly like him, so the kids break into their grandpa's private study room while he's off at a retirement party celebrating his lifetime as a brilliant doctor. However, once he's away, a mysterious stranger shows up to break into the old man's mansion to steal something very useful for his evil plans. While playing doctor, Jenny and Jack find a special recording box that has the power to remove and release people's fears onto the real world. But they accidentally release their own nightmares into our reality and attract the attention of this creepy stranger, who reveals himself to be the living embodiment of fear itself. I absolutely love this bad guy. From his over-the-top acting to his creepy facial expressions, Fear is by far one of the coolest and most unnerving villains from this show. He's played by a guy named Christopher Heyerdahl, who specializes in over-the-top demented villain roles, and he is definitely one of the funnest antagonists on the show. Now, he's no Uncle Howie or Big Yellow, but I think the guy is so entertaining and menacing as the boogeyman. I also like this guy more than the Dreamcatcher, thanks to the actor not being restrained in a huge costume, so Fear has more room to go all out with his ominous voice and odd facial expressions, instead of being behind too much makeup or huge costume parts. Everything this guy does in the episode is always so sinister or flat out evil. Heck, even this guy's laugh is super evil.
He's downstairs. And he's got a shotgun.
Now that evilness takes talent. Fear reveals that he broke into their house because he claims to be a best friend of their doctor grandpa, since the two of them built the super recording box together a long time ago. But the grandfather promised to return it to him once his esteemed therapy career ended. Of course, the kids don't trust this obvious creepy stranger, where the show's most intense standoff begins. I think this episode is just dripping with so much atmosphere and large amounts of unsettling tension in the air thanks to the great performances. Yes, even the boy who played the brain-dead moron Bobby from Poop de Fromage was in this episode, and even he was able to pull off a decent act. This episode was that good. Fortunately, this plot was also not deprived of intelligent writing either. The story has a ton of discussions on how we all have something we're afraid of, and that it's okay to be afraid sometimes, since you can always conquer your fears, or just learn to live with them. That's so much deeper than the bullcrap forgive your abusive family garbage from Spores and Mrs. Worthington. This episode also adds in a subtle gray morality about whether or not Jack and Jenny's grandpa was an innocent guy or not, since Fear is never totally proven to be in the wrong for calling out the Doctor for helping him build the magic box in the first place. So I can dig the attempts at even giving him a complex character arc. He initially made the box with the boogeyman because he wanted to help people conquer their inner demons, but now that his time as a successful therapist has ended, Fear came back to retrieve the artifact because he plans to use the Box of Fears to, you guessed it, take over the world.
Of course.
This leads into a very serious final stand where the stakes are incredibly high and we as an audience care about what might go down, pretty much solidifying this episode as a good horror story because we care about all the characters involved and worry about the conflict. A super fun villain, uneasy atmosphere, intelligent themes, decent psychological horror, morally gray concepts, smart looks at why we all have fears in our minds, tense scenarios, great acting, and a dread for the unknown. Fear Never Knocks is an amazing horror short that established how the Haunting Hour could be something beyond the typical evil monster of the week formula by offering us a tale with many lenses to look at it through. If you want a small psychological horror story with smart moments and an ultra amazing villain, then this story is absolutely for you. I love this one so much that I put it ahead of the Dreamcatcher. I thought it was that epic. Fear Never Knocks is certainly a must-see episode from the Haunting Hour, for making us dread what lies awaiting for us in the shadows. Number 5. Scarecrow. Aw yeah, now we're getting into the iconic tales of fantastic horror. The Scarecrow is naturally about a living demonic scarecrow haunting a secluded farm area somewhere out in the south, while two siblings named Jenny and Bobby must uncover its dark end goal before it's too late. Now, upon first glance, this episode might come across as just an upgraded version of the Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, with a simple monster killing people and ultimately being a typical good versus evil plotline, right? Shockingly, no. It does start out that way, but as it nears the end, it changes into a real existential crisis, talking about the meaning of life itself. Yes, yeah, you heard that right. A goofy children's R.L. Stine show actually takes a philosophical turn to talk about what life means to us and if it's worth anything at all. Holy cow, Haunting Hour, you're really trying to break off the routine safe children's program standards. And it's actually quite good at it. I dare say, a total epic success. This episode doesn't go the lazy route and drop in clever ideas only to just abandon them later. They actually talk about important viewpoints and allow the audience to piece together their own opinions. This episode was massively inspired by the T.S. Eliot poem, The Hollow Men, a short poem about people who have seen horrible sights in their life, which rendered them dead on the inside, believing that life is only a never-ending hell we go through until the day we die empty and soulless. Perfect material for a family show, huh? I bring this up because the episode itself frequently quotes the Hollow Men poem all throughout the whole tale, even closing it out on the literary work's most famous line. This episode is set up like it would just be a silly slasher movie kind of plot, only to pull the rug from under us and go for themes that are pretty hardcore for a family program. I really liked it, because much like Toy Train, adults can really get affected by it as much as the kids do. I won't lie, this tale does have the usual monster stuff in it, like the mysterious Scarecrow obviously being alive and slowly killing all the people around town, but we soon get a reason behind why it's doing all of this, outside of it's just being evil. Jenny requires assistance growing her cornfield because the crows keep ruining it, so she purchases a magic scarecrow from a creepy stranger who mysteriously showed up in town, who has a bizarre fascination with the siblings. But once she constructs her new scarecrow, the dummy comes to life and vanishes without a trace. Later, the Scarecrow reappears and disappears frequently throughout the whole story, yet we never actually see the thing move at all, kind of inserting some unnerving fear around the Scarecrow, since it's not as in-your-face like the Goosebumps ones were. However, the siblings start to take notice that the Scarecrow is scaring away more than just the crows, because as the episode goes on, everyone starts vanishing too. First, Bobby's dog disappears, then their farm animals disappear, then their parents disappear, then their friends disappear, and then eventually their whole town disappears. This forces the siblings to solve the mystery as soon as possible, because if they don't, then they'll vanish too. As you can guess, the Scarecrow is behind all these Thanos shenanigans because his secret agenda must be complete, no matter what. I won't give away too much, but the climax of this episode is where all the serious existential themes come into play, and it is glorious. Unlike most of the Haunting Hour monsters, the Scarecrow is a different kind of monster, since it gets a whole lot of character out in the final act, revealing why he's doing all this and how he feels about all of it. Which is pretty dang surprising to say the least. The main characters are perfectly acted in this one, since the great Bailey Madison and Richard Harmon are pretty phenomenal in this for typical kid heroes. I also think the guy playing the creepy stranger, Juan Riedinger, deserves special props too for his wonderful scenes. I can't give away too much, but this guy was a very crucial character in the plot, and his scenes with Bobby has heavy emotions in them. So it's a good thing the showrunners threw their all into this one, rather than just taking the easy way out by making it a simple slasher formula. The cinematography was pretty great, the writing was perfect, the villain was very unsettling, even with the limited screen time, the eerie quietness was better on here than on A Quiet Place, and the horror was pretty subtle, which suited this episode very well. I really don't have enough words to tell you how good the story was without spoiling it all. But I will say that this is another fantastic horror adventure, showing off how brilliant The Haunting Hour was as a TV show. This episode wanted to be scary in a different sort of way, but also managed to ask us some seriously good questions that scared us more than the Scarecrow itself did. This story was by far one of the deepest Haunting Hour episodes I've ever seen, and really raised the bar for the show, which is why I'm so harsh on garbage like Mrs. Worthington and My Robot. Because the series was so wondrous at multiple flavors of horror, with this one being one of the best examples of that honor. So, in short, I thought it was okay. Definitely check this one out if you want to see The Haunting Hour blowing your mind with complex thinking. The Scarecrow is one of the best hidden gems underneath this show's large haystack. Number 4. Uncle Howie. Oh, frabjous day, galoo galay. Uncle Howie is here, hooray! This episode might just be both the funniest and most terrifying episode ever on this list. In this adventure, a bizarre little girl named Cynthia is being babysat by her idiot bully big brother Jared, since their mother is working late on the night shift at the hospital. The only thing keeping her entertained is her favorite TV show, Uncle Howie, a goofy over-the-top Pee-wee's Playhouse ripoff featuring everybody's favorite uncle, Uncle Howie, who's played by none other than Tom Kenny. That's right, the guy who voices SpongeBob SquarePants and some other cartoon icons whom I'm sure we've never seen or heard of before in our life, is a big guest star on this horror series, playing an obnoxiously loud, overly optimistic, yellow crazy guy in a suit and his dim-witted puppet best friend. So he's basically just SpongeBob if he were a human being. Got it. At first, it seems like Uncle Howie is just an eccentric performer on a fictional children's show, but as we soon find out instantly, he's very real, and real protective of his young audience. Later, the idiot big bully brother Jared tries to weasel his way out of babysitting duties, ruins his kid sister's good fun, bosses her around, and attempts to put her to bed early so he can ditch her in order to hang out with his friends and go see the Goosebumps movie. But Uncle Howie soon enters the real world to protect Cynthia and give Jared his just desserts.
Just desserts.
Won't lie, a huge portion of this plot is essentially Uncle Howie and his puppet pal Loomis trolling and punishing Jared for being such a horrible prick, and has long bully torture porn. What makes it better is that Tom Kenny is really funny and naturally giving his all in his performance, being both a great combination of creepy and humorous. A lot of us Haunting Hour fans absolutely adore this episode for Tom Kenny alone, because we all know him as a great actor, and he just makes this episode so awesome. I could not think of a better actor who could make this character so much amusing to watch other than him. I can't go too in-depth on this story since that would spoil way too much of the fun, but this episode is just super hilarious. Uncle Howie does have his scary moments as well. In most of this episode, his scary moments are mostly acting like a very disturbing pedophile thanks to his extreme closeness to this little girl. Uncle Howie also has a bit of a twisted side, as we see that he gets a little too much fun out of tormenting Jared, and as we see in the twist ending, he is not afraid to cross a few lines. Seriously, you'll never look at SpongeBob SquarePants the same way ever again. Okay, more worse than he was in the bad episodes. Uncle Howie is pretty much a real killer clown antagonist because he's both funny and psychotic. This episode also dips into the gray morality pool a little as well, because if you can believe it or not, some of the hardcore Haunting Hour fans, including yours truly, are actually divided on whether or not Uncle Howie is truly a villain or an anti-hero. On the one paw, he is terrorizing a child, and based on the twist ending, is very malicious in his actions. But on the other paw, he is doing all this to protect a little girl who was bullied by this jerk, and points out that Jared has been a naughty boy beforehand, so he's not entirely wrong about the guy deserving some karma. If you've seen my top 10 best Haunting Hour villains video, then you know that I don't really consider this guy a true villain. But that's the great thing about this episode. The character can be interpreted in many differing ways. Some could view Uncle Howie as anything at all, which only makes his mysterious nature all the more ominous. So I can dig it. In short, Uncle Howie is both remembered as an absolutely funny episode for Tom Kenny's grand performance, but also manages to be an incredibly dark experience thanks to hiding a cruel nature underneath the false happiness the comedian wears as a front. I consider it a fantastic watch that is so much dark fun and demonstrates how horror stories can have a variety of tones that don't contrast the story's feel when properly structured. The comedy is actually good in a Haunting Hour episode for once. The horror is quite unnerving. The dark twist ending is one of the most terrifying conclusions ever on this show. Tom Kenny is awesome. The effects are so good that they make Sesame Street look scary. The story is simple enough for everyone to follow. It allows the viewers to really think about who's in the right on here. And best of all, it never loses your attention. It's just so entertaining that you'll want to watch it all the way through thanks to its insane atmosphere. I mean, what more can I say to convince you that this episode was that good? The Haunting Hour made SpongeBob SquarePants scary. SpongeBob SquarePants. This grim tale was that epic. It's a truly gripping experience that certainly never fails to amuse you, making it one of the Haunting Hour's greatest successes in the show's history. Uncle Howie is a must-watch episode for every Haunting Hour fan because he's the bestest friend anyone could ever want.
How we do it? How we do it? It's the Uncle Howie Show. Let's just hope it never ends. Do you wanna be my friend? Baby, I'm the trouble man.
Number 3. Mascot. If you thought going to school was scary before, well, just wait until you see how our favorite horror show designs a creepy school mascot. In this tale of ghoulish horrors, we follow 2 teenage freshmen named Willie and Drake who believe that their school needs more spirit because their school's team mascot sucks. We see that this unimpressive monster mascot is a huge, unnatural, rejected Sesame Street Muppet named Big Yellow, who the kids seek to replace with a much better school mascot because they think he's doing a bad job. Right off the bat, this mascot guy is the most horrific-looking villain we've ever seen. He doesn't do too much at first, but his physical appearance is just unnerving on his first minute of screen time. I mean, just look at him. His appearance alone just dominates the whole screen, and it absolutely terrifies. I've gotten a lot of comments asking us, what the heck even is this thing? Well, I don't know for certain, because the show doesn't go into full detail on Big Yellow's costume. But according to Drake, Big Yellow's costume is apparently based on an endangered species of marsupials that used to live in Yellow Valley before industrialization came along and purged them. They do briefly state this point in the episode itself.
What the heck is that thing anyway? Looks like it crawled out of some old guy's nose and grew claws. Well, Yellow Valley is home to some prehistoric marsupials. Could be a nod to that. Marsupials? Yeah, like a possum. The thing that does not look like an opossum.
That's the only hint we get to what the mascot is meant to be. The real story on this one involves the 2 teenagers convincing the school administration to remove Big Yellow as the school's mascot, so they can get a new, totally cooler mascot in that will actually make the school proud with good epic dance moves. However, the mascot Big Yellow won't take this lying down, and goes to extreme lengths to prevent the idiot kids from taking his job away from him. And the bulk of this narrative is Big Yellow doing very disturbing villainous plans to sabotage the attempts at getting a new mascot, while our heroes Willie and Drake try to solve the mystery of who Big Yellow really is. The show does quite a decent job at building up a dark atmosphere around the scary mascot Muppet, since every time the kids ask school staff questions, it's frequently pointed out that nobody knows who Big Yellow really is underneath the mask, which definitely adds an unsettling fear factor in the story, since our villain is a lot more involved in the conflict compared to a generic maniac villain. Eventually, the more the boys look into Big Yellow's backstory, the more creepy things get. We find out that the school actually tried to fire the mascot once before, but the school's old coach mysteriously disappeared without any body left behind. The school district has no clue who the guy really is, and just to make sure we get that he's the bad guy, Big Yellow starts threatening the kids when they keep interfering in his life. I think Mascot is a great episode because the mystery is so engaging and the antagonist Big Yellow is actually scary. Not to mention that he has a lot more going on in his life behind the scenes and he's actively connected to the conflict, which is why I didn't like villains such as the wacky comedy doctor or Alice Claiborne, because there was little to nothing linking them to the horror plot. Big Yellow is, in my opinion, one of the Haunting Hour's greatest villains, because he's so creepy, he's well designed, he's a real menace to the heroes, he has a dark, mysterious past that makes us want to learn more about him, and best of all, he's a smart villain. The final act of this episode is the most out there horror experience to ever haunt your nightmares, because it also shows us that Big Yellow is not a stupid brute like how he appears on the surface. When Willie breaks into Big Yellow's secret evil lair, the mascot, of course, comes back earlier than expected. But you get the feeling that he starts toying with the kid because he fakes him out numerous times, and when he does leave, he actually has a poison death gas chamber in his room to kill any intruders who might break in. A poison death gas chamber. This villain honestly has a poison death gas chamber prepared on the off chance that somebody might get too close to knowing the truth about him. That is so absurd, but also so dark. And I just want to remind you all that Big Yellow is doing all of this because he doesn't want to lose his position as a high school mascot. He's really doing all this sick, evil scheming to avoid losing his job as a school mascot. I guess Big Yellow loves school more than any of us ever do. I think this episode is a whole lot of scary fun. The story is pretty simple, the nightmare fuel is off the charts, and it almost feels like something too dark to show to kids thanks to how far this episode goes later. The only deep idea in this episode is whether or not you can feel for Big Yellow once you realize who he really is. I briefly talked about this in my review, but I think it's possible that some people could feel a tad sorry for Big Yellow when you realize that this job is the only thing he has in his life, and losing that is what drove him over the edge. Again, it doesn't justify his horrible crimes in this episode, but it does make you understand his point of view. But ultimately, this episode is on this list because it's unanimously agreed that this is one of the scariest stories the Haunting Hour ever made, and it does earn that title. The story is decently written, the mystery is very cool, the villain is the most memorable character to ever haunt our nightmares, the main characters are alright, the settings are kind of nifty, and best of all, it is one of the grimmest adventures ever, so much that it traumatized children for life, so it's got my approval. Sadly, the only reason why this isn't my number one is because it has the oh-so-classic useless idiot adult cliche, which I hate with a passion. I'm sorry, but it just interrupted my fun so oftenly because it's annoying how overdone this trope is in horror. That's just how I feel. But I can say that this is a super scary classic that I will recommend to the highest degree since it's just so dark and amusing. Over the top, yes, but but fun. Well, if the fan-favorite classic Mascot is only number 3 on this list, then what do I consider superior to that? You'll see. Number 2. The Girl in the Painting. Now here's a picture that's just so perfect. The Girl in the Painting is one of the greatest episodes I've ever seen in my whole life. Quite possibly one of the best horror stories I had the pleasure of viewing. In this visual spectacle, we follow a poor girl named Becky, played by the great Bailee Madison, angsting about how her life is not perfect, and witness how she desires reaching her dreams of having a richer lifestyle, despite her family's financial troubles. One day, Becky finds an ominous painting of a beautiful girl living in her magic castle, which she takes back home to make her room look slightly better. However, Becky slowly begins to gain an obsession with the cute girl in the painting to the point of sheer insanity because she wants to become her hero and undergoes many mental breakdowns to copy her idol's world. That's right, this is another Haunting Hour tale that touches upon some deep psychological horror when the show emphasizes how Becky's obsession will soon become her own undoing. As you can guess, the girl in the painting is proven to be a real person, and she invites Becky into her magical world to finally gain her perfect life. But we all just know that there's much more to this than it appears. No, this is not a big spoiler, because the show's trailers completely gave away that the girl in the painting was real all along, and this is clearly a trap. Seriously, just try looking for a trailer of this episode, and you'll see that they completely gave away this whole plot point. Freaking trailers always spoiling the good stuff immediately.
Not spoilers!
Nevertheless, I enjoyed this masterpiece quite a lot. This episode has it all. Excellent character writing, great performances, complex inner struggles, nice set pieces, unforgettable visuals, gray morality between all our characters, surprisingly whimsical music that sticks in your head, a brilliantly crafted plot, a good moral telling people to avoid close-minded obsessions, sweet nightmare fuel, and best of all, it has a dark, uneasy tone, perfectly balanced throughout the whole journey. I think this episode was a fantastic Haunting Hour thriller because it really went all out in every department, and it's especially awesome when you remember that this was a Season 3 episode, which was the season where the show was losing its sharp edge, yet it still succeeded with gold stars. I really found this one to be the Haunting Hour's most ambitious project, because it strongly felt like it was surpassing the horrendously weak stuff we typically got in Season 3's lame episodes, and was just as impactful as the Scarecrow was for me. I love it when the Haunting Hour tries to make us feel for the story, rather than just being a generic monster battle, since it leaves us with much more than what the filler episodes ever wish they did. The episode's psychological horror also played a huge part in making our human character Becky just as interesting as the supernatural antagonists. We see Becky slowly losing her grasp on reality, and the show does play some clever mind tricks on her and the viewers when we see the girl in the painting moving around, shifting in places, altering the drawing, and eventually speaking to Becky from time to time, making us question if any of this is real or if it's all Becky's insanity. True, they do reveal that the girl in the painting was real all along, but that's by the final act. Yet Bailee Madison was just so entertaining to follow that you don't really mind how a human received more focus and allowed her to have time to develop. I thought it was gripping from start to finish, so you know I highly recommend checking out this one because it's just so masterfully done. Sure, it's not Mascot or the Dreamcatcher, but I think it's a fine example of how a beautiful work of art is worth 1,000 words. Before we go on to our final episode, I just wanted to take the time to give some shoutouts to a few honorable mentions. These were all the episodes that I and many others loved, but didn't quite make it onto my list. Again, I'm sorry, but narrowing down the best Haunting Hour tales was a harder task than you'd think. So let's go over all the other best episodes. The Lily D story arc, A Creature Was Stirring, The Dead Body, Dead Bodies, Nightmare Inn, The Red Dress, The Walls, Game Over, Alien Candy, Black Mask, My Sister the Witch, Wrong Number, Catching Cold, Lights Out, Scary Mary, The Perfect Brother, Creature Feature, Swarmin' Norman, Flight, Pumpkinhead, Brush with Madness, Sick, The Most Evil Sorcerer, Grampires, The Cast, The Weeping Woman, My Imaginary Friend, The Golem, Checking Out, Detention, The Funhouse, Worry Dolls, Lovecraft's Woods, Coat Rat Cowboy, Long Live Rock and Roll, RV, Lots of Luck, and Grandpa's Glasses. There. Those were all the other episodes that I liked but had no room for. Any tales you didn't see on this video were all ones I didn't like or care about. I hope you won't complain if I missed any now. So with all that out of the way, let's finish this with our number one. Number 1. My Old House. Oh yeah, now we're finally getting to a real good episode. Shut up, House. This tale is, in all brutal honesty, my absolute favorite episode of R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour. It has just as much coolness as the girl in the painting does, and more. And more? I really loved this one, and highly recommend checking it out, because it was so creepy, so nightmarish, so intriguing, so well written, and super symbolically deeper than it seems upon first glance. In this episode, we follow some shy, emotional, antisocial little girl named Alice, who is moving away. But alas, this means that she must break up with her boyfriend, who is actually her house. No, really. This episode makes it very loud and clear that Alice and the house are in love with each other. It's not exactly subtle in this element. Alice has lived with her loving sentient home all her life, but moving away is going to separate them apart forever because she has to move into a whole new, non-living house across town. At least we don't know if her new home is alive or not. It's never made clear if all houses are living creatures in this world or not, because we only see Alice's old home showing signs of life. Much like the girl in the painting, this episode does also play clever mind games with us, making the viewer question if the house is really alive or if it's all in our antisocial protagonist's head. Of course, this is proven true, because this is the Haunting Hour. Every legend and crazy possibility is proven factual by the end, and most of this episode is revolving around Alice and her creepy, unnatural relationship with her boyfriend, the house. That alone is quite scary before the house's dark side even starts bubbling towards the surface, because the actress really goes all out trying to show her love for the building. Eventually, Alice runs away from home to be with her old house boyfriend so they can live their demented fantasy life forever and ever, all while her parents worry about her safety and desperately search around for her before something bad occurs. A huge element that makes this episode super deep, complex, and almost disturbingly relatable is that the episode sort of portrays the house as an obsessive, controlling boyfriend coercing Alice to stay by his side 24/7. And yeah, it does really get uncomfortably towards abusive relationship standards around the final act, to the point where the house undergoes many dark mood swings and just refuses to let Alice go or be away from it. Seriously, the house is 1 minute offering her free food and presents like he's her sugar daddy, but is so desperate to keep her forever that he convinces her to hide from her own parents, or just ignores their emotional concerns for her like a sociopath attempting to keep what's his. It's quite a whole new level of screwed up when you look at it like that. I do also love the character Alice as well, since you get the feeling that she's so innocently shy and lacks confidence, which makes the house preying upon her by pretending to be her best friend all the more sickening. Alice has no friends, no life, no self-esteem, and actually distrusts her own parents in favor of her house. This is because, as she said in the episode, the house was always there for her during her whole life, so he kept her close at all times. So much that she never truly did leave it that often, emphasizing my point that it represents a controlling relationship. However, exactly like Big Yellow and Uncle Howie, I think the house could be seen from multiple differing alternate character interpretations. What I'm saying is, was the house always an abusive control freak? Or is he just as much a victim of emotional pain as Alice is? Was the house always an evil bastard? Or is this episode his slow fall into villainy himself, because his misunderstandings of true love caused him to go insane? Was there a point in time when the house was truly this angelic role model who Alice fell in love with in the first place? Or was the house just being an entitled nice guy who thought he deserved Alice's affections because he did good things for her? Was the house evil for a long time, or did he just get consumed by his own obsession with his lost lover? Is Alice even the real main character? Or is the house the true protagonist, and this whole tale of suspense was really his transformation into an evil villain?
Holy cow! You just blew my mind!
It's so hard to find your own identity when even you don't know what you want. Speaking of which, this whole episode also has a very clever theme regarding Alice's identity as well. Alice is so obsessed with sticking by her boyfriend the house that her own identity just revolves around it, preventing her from discovering who she is or what she truly wants out of her life. This does get a horrific resolution to that idea in the dark twist ending. This tale of suspense has achieved the honor of having the most grim twist ending you'll ever see. This is quite likely the darkest conclusion of a Haunting Hour episode. It also made me feel a wide array of emotions once it all ended. I felt horrified, scarred for life, sickened by what happened between the two lovebirds, yet I also kind of felt sad, since in the grand scheme of things, I felt sorry for all these main characters and how screwed up their lives became. It's fantastic writing when you feel both scared and sad by the end for the dark drama. So bravo, Haunting Hour, for making me feel for the show again after getting over all the worst episodes of the series. Also, this is just a trivia note, but this episode has Princess Celestia in it as Alice's mother, which is just awesome. How funny is it that two of the fan-favorite episodes of this show had My Little Pony actors on it? What's next? Princess Twilight as a psychopath?
I can find a friendship problem. I'll make a friendship problem.
Overall, I truly admire this episode and consider it my personal favorite episode of the series because it's so well written, so well acted, so deep and symbolic, has a relatable conflict when it comes to relationships, has a good moral for kids to put their trust in the right people, has a good lesson for adults to not admire abusive lovers when they don't deserve it at all. It's super unsettling from beginning to the tail end. The twist ending is the most traumatizing one you'll ever see. It has quite a lot of paranoia fuel and nightmare fuel, and the greatest part of all, it has a memorable antagonist. The house is super cool, scary, complex, and mysterious that he sticks out in your mind much longer than the typical ghosts or crazy psychos do. It's just so astounding. In fact, this tale was so great that I'm retconning my original score I had on my old review of it. If you go back to see my old review on this episode, I spent a whole lot of time heckling it and bashing the weird plot holes, but in the end, I still loved it. But now, after rewatching every episode of the series, I've realized that this episode was a lot better than I remembered it. So I'm giving My Old House a perfect score. Looking into the positives of the show again really gave me a new view on things. So I'm giving My Old House a perfect score because I loved it that much. Are you happy, R.L. Stine fanboys and fangirls? I, at long last, gave this tale the praise it rightfully deserved, and all it took was me suffering through all the worst stories just to see that. Was it all worth it? Finally, Cat comes to his senses and gives me the proper respect I deserve. Shut up, House. In the end, My Old House is an outstanding horror story that perfectly shows off how phenomenal and disturbing this series could be when it tried hard and took concern for their storytelling. This is, without a doubt in my mind, the #1 best episode of the hit horror show R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour. And that concludes my top 10 best episodes list. What did you guys think? Was I right on the money with these epic masterpieces? Were there any you disagreed with? Do I know great talent or what? Do these episodes indeed show off how awesome The Haunting Hour is? What are your top 10 favorite episodes of this beloved classic horror series? Well, feel free to post in the comments section below, because I can't hear you through a recording screen. If you love our content, then please feel free to check out our other horror reviews or the other fun little projects we have in store for the future. This list was fun to make because I truly believe these episodes were the best precisely because The Haunting Hour was an excellent classic TV series. So you should definitely check it out if you want to see all the madness firsthand. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just tune in for more videos posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I wish you all pleasant nightmares. See you next time. When are you going to review the Haunting Hour movie? Cat? Cat? Don't give it to Wolf.